I've been thinking about this topic for a while now, so I decided to share my views on how people really get to gauge difficulty in games like in Tower Obbies. You know, I originally had this thought when I was talking to my friend about how I thought that one Tower of the Home Finder had easier jumps than Tower of Malefic Nuisances. This is very interesting for me because I am currently terrifying to catastrophic skill, so I wouldn't be able to tell the difficulty of a horrific tower. They're both horrific towers, bottom horrific around, bottom low horrific. I wouldn't be able to tell the overall difficulty of both of these towers without actually like grinding, getting runs on it, and doing more than just all jumping, right? Because it's out of my skill range enough so that it's out of my skill range enough so that I can play it, but I can't actually understand how it's like to grind it, because grinding it would be redundant because I probably won't beat it if I did grind it. I definitely know that. But let's just go back to the topic of how I claim that Tower of the Home Finder has easier jumps than Tower of Malefic Nuisance's jumps. So let's first talk about like what I did with both towers. So with the Home Finder, I did two all jumps on the tower, and I did a very brief practice run of me just randomly playing through the tower because I was bored, right? For Tower Malefic Nuisances, I actually spent a bit more effort. I spent a bit more time with Malefic. I outjumped it multiple times, and I have found my own ways of doing jumps that are pretty consistent. So if you were to think of like how much time you spent on the tower being like, the more time you spend, the harder or the easier you think it is. In that case, if you have that kind of bias, then in that case I spend more time on Malefic Nuisances. So yeah, I do think that after playing Malefic for a bit longer, I found it harder than it initially was for me. And for Home Finder, I found it around the same difficulty as I once initially thought. I didn't change my opinion on Home Finder that much. So let's talk about how I even got to that conclusion where the jumps in TOTH are easier than the jumps in TOMN. First of all, I'm not talking about the overall overall difficulty of the towers here. I'm talking about how the jumps felt. It's very important. That's a very important distinction. If I were to comment on, how the towers should be rated, as in like maybe bottom low horrific, bottom horrific, peak catastrophic, those kind of values are left for when after you've already have a good understanding, some good runs, or even maybe you beat it, right? After you've played the tower for a while and you've started to understand like all the factors that go into like how this tower gets its difficulty, then you can start accurately gauging the overall difficulty of the tower, right? It's very important to know. It's usually when you start a tower, you just know the rated difficulty, or if it doesn't have a difficulty, then you just enter the tower, right? And then as you play it, you start to adjust what you think of the tower as like maybe your first all jump, second all jump, maybe some practice runs, all flooring, and then maybe actual real runs, segments. After you get like each step you take, you get a more nuanced, pronounced kind of view of what makes the tower hard, right? When I started Tower of Cataclysmic Layers, uh, I knew that a lot of people actually, found the tower, it wasn't catastrophic if they said the tower was like terrifying, right? The range usually goes from mid-high Terry to high peak or like peak Terry. What people I like what I've heard from people, right? So when I entered, like for the first time, when I entered Tower of Cataclysmic Layers, I thought it was just gonna feel like maybe a Terry, or maybe it's gonna feel like a cat. Like maybe the people are, maybe I have a different perception of the tower than other people, right? So as you can see, when I entered the tower initially, I didn't know what I thought of the difficulty, because I really just did one all jump, and I was like, this is harder than anything I've done before. And that's all I know, because I haven't done any other towers in a similar difficulty range, and I'll get to that in a second about having like reference difficulties. But after that one all jump, I wasn't very certain about like what the actual difficulty of the tower was. I just knew that the jumps were harder than the ones that I've done before in like Alien Radiance, for example. That's the second hardest tower at the time. So what made it more clear for me was just more playtime and more runs. After around 15 hours and like a run to 7, I started to lock in my thought of this tower being, oh, it's very, very, very low catastrophic, maybe even baseline, right? That's when I kind of just started to understand what the tower is all about. Like floor 7 is kind of loot fairly, tower is loot fairly in general. It's 1 to 3 heavy, floors 1 to 3 are hard, stuff like that, It really plays into the difficulty of the tower, like as in like factors that you won't get like doing an all jump. For example, punishments, and maybe like specific choke points. So for example, Tower of Cataclysmic Layers has floor 10 as unnetted, or mostly unnetted. It's basically nine times out of 10 it is nothing below you on floor 10. But then floors 7, 8, 9, those are pretty netted. Like you probably won't fall past 8 if you get like past 8. Like get to the net, right? So you only get that kind of nuance once you've put some time in the tower and you've understood it. Because if you just did an all jump, you just see that, oh, there's a net below me. I wonder how useful it is, right? You don't really get to know like how much it actually does save you when like you actually play the tower. And so what you're looking at in an all jump is just how the jumps feel in comparison to other towers of the similar difficulty. Let's go back to the Home Finder and Malefic case. So for TOTH, I thought that tower had easier jumps than TOMN. And that was true, because when you do an all jump over the tower, you do get to feel how hard the jumps are compared to other towers of similar difficulty. I have in the bottom horrific range, kind of that like very low horrific range. The tower, the most like the most iconic, I guess you can say, the towers that I have the most understanding in, I don't have much understanding in, but these are just the ones that I know the best because I've done multiple all jumps of them. It's Home Finder and Malefic, right? These two towers. So I can, like, in my opinion, if you're looking at my skill set and looking at how I believe it, I believe that for me, Tower of Malefic, the jumps give me more trouble than in Home Finder, right? And like if someone thinks that a if someone thinks that the jumps are harder than like some other jumps, it doesn't mean that you will have the same opinion, because everyone has different, thoughts. Let's say that Tower of Malefic. Malefic is usually considered a let's say it's usually considered cam control and some good like good methods to enter each jump. Like the beginning of each jump is pretty important. You need to know a bit about the Roblox physics engine to understand Malefic, right? Meanwhile, Home Finder is more of a punishment based. Yeah. We'll ignore punishment for now, but Home Finder is more of a cam control, large jump, kind of that kind of gameplay, right? And so, as you can see, these two gameplay styles are already different. So, some people may find Home Finder to be easier. Some people may find Malefic to be easier. It really depends on who's giving the opinion, because difficulty is not objective. Difficulty has to be subjective, and everyone has a different perception of like which is harder, what is harder. Maybe I think that Malefic is harder. Maybe someone thinks that Home Finder is harder, and harder as in the jumps are harder, because I don't actually know the difficulty of these two towers. I just know that the jumps, in my opinion, they give me more headaches than the others. This is a comparison of like towers that are rated similar difficulty, and if like the jumps in one tower are as difficult as another tower of similar rating. Sorry, bad case. Let's go back to my case with the two horrific towers. If TOTH had easier gameplay than maybe TOMN, then you don't know anything about the punishments, the length, the like how you catch yourself, like those kind of factors. You don't consider them when you're looking at the jumps only, right? The punishment of towers. Okay. Going back to the example, Home Finder is more punishing than Malefic. Malefic, you can kind of fall on stuff and then you can recover a bit, right? And so that does actually kind of line up with the fact that Home Finder has easier raw gameplay, because it's more punishing, right? Meanwhile, Home Finder is much shorter than Malefic. Home Finder being around 3 minutes and Malefic being around 6 minutes. So there are definitely like multiple factors here, and you can't really like understand which one's harder unless you've actually played the tower, because right now with punishment and length being considered, they're both, you can't really tell. You can't really tell, right? So how do people like gauge difficulty at a first glance then? Because curators for towers, right? What they do is they go do an all jump of the tower, and then they just spit out a difficulty out. So let's say like intense or insane, like those kind of difficulty ranges, right? So how do people do that even though they've only done one all jump of the tower? Well, that's what I want to talk about here. It's about comparisons. So let's say you played a intense tower. We're not gonna go into specifics, but an intense tower is very punishing, but the raw gameplay is easy. Let's say you're a creator and you have played a tower like that. You can imagine other intense towers that have similar traits. So like another intense tower has also this kind of punishment, very high punishment. And so I expect with that kind of punishment and that kind of length, maybe they have similar lengths as well, similar towers, I bet the raw gameplay is similar as well. And if it is, then it's definitely a similar difficulty with each other. Now it's not. Now people are like not very good at like detecting and like comparing like which towers are maybe harder, a bit easier, right? Because there is a lot of factors that go into it. But if you boil it down to like punishment, length, raw difficulty, then it isn't like it gets to the rough ballpark that you're looking for. Because creators, they don't have to like give like decimal ratings or anything, they just have to give a range, right? Let's just say it's catastrophic. So it's catastrophic, you don't know if it's high or low catastrophic. So from here, if you just do comparisons of other towers, then you already have a general idea of what range you're going for. And of course, if you grind the tower, you have a much better understanding and you can give a much better rating, right? I also want to talk about how your skill range affects what you can accurately rate. So let's say John. I will not use John. Let's do a random player. This player has a good experience playing client object extreme towers, right? They played a lot of client object extreme towers. Their purism isn't as good. Maybe their purism is insane level. And if they play a extreme level CO tower, they're gonna think it's familiar territory. They can accurately rate towers like that because they already have experience with that kind of tower. But if they play an extreme level purist tower, they don't really have a comparison point to reference to, and so you can't really gauge that accurately. Same thing goes for if you're rating something that's way out of your skill range. For example, for example, rating stuff that's horrific is not very feasible because, well, I can't do horrifics. So because horrifics I have never done before, so I have no like reference point for how hard a horrific should be, or like how the scaling works in horrific, right? But if I've just played a terrifying tower or a catastrophic tower, like around those kind of points, I definitely have reference points to point to when I say, oh, maybe it's harder than Tower of Alien Radiance. Oh, it's easier than Tower of Uncanny Agony. And so I already have a little range there, a little mid carry range. And so yeah, you difficulty is all about comparing comparing towers of other. Difficulty is all about comparing which tower is harder, which tower is easier, if you think about it. Because this this unit of difficulty is an arbitrary unit where where they're trying to quantize difficulty, as in you're referencing different towers difficulty. You wouldn't know how hard a terrifying tower would be if you didn't have tower fractured memories as the baseline. And you also need a catastrophic baseline being augmented misery. And so, well, some people might not agree with that being the catastrophic baseline, but let's say augmented misery is the catastrophic baseline. Then anything harder than Tower of Fractured Memories and easier than Tower of Augmented Miseries has to lie in Terry range, because those two are the baselines for terrifying and catastrophic, right? So if you think about it, difficulty is all about comparisons. And then in between those baselines, there are more nuanced, there are more precise difficulties like mid catastrophic, mid high catastrophic, low mid catastrophic. Those kind of differences are all about different towers being placed in which places. And so if you need an accurate like rating of a tower, then you must have experience playing towers of that kind of difficulty in that kind of range. If I suddenly if I woke up and I beat a horrific tower right now, I would not know. I would not have a clue whether to put it on bottom horrific, bottom low horrific, I will not have a clue. That's because I've never played anything that's horrific before, so I don't have any reference point. For Tower of Cataclysmic Layers, I'm gonna go back to this point. For TOCL, what I did, I played other catastrophic towers, and so I do have a very rough, it's not concrete, very rough estimate for how hard TOCL should be. I played Augmented Misery, right? That's the baseline for catastrophic in ETO. It's rated 11.00. So the reason why I did not like uprate or downrate TOCL, first of all, if I felt I would definitely more prefer downrating it than uprating it. Definitely, right? 11.03 was the rating of the tower when I beat it. It's rated 11.00 baseline kata, which I'm completely fine with changing my personal difficulty to that actually. So I believe that Augmented Misery has a very similar, very similar difficulty to TOCL. After like a bit of playing Tail Augmented Misery, and so I thought, like baseline or like bottom kata range seems appropriate. So I'm gonna think that this is the range of the difficulty for TOCL, and that's how I rated it, right? So if you want to rate something, then again you must have experience in that, and by extension, that means that you can only rate stuff accurately if that's part of your current skill, or past you have played towers of a easier skill. For example, in the Remorses range, I am really bad at rating Remorses things because, well, I haven't played many Remorses towers. I kind of just went to Insane, right? I kind of skipped from bottom realm to Insane. And so I can rate intense things more accurately than Remorses things. So everyone is different in like what towers they have beaten, but generally they have beaten towers that are easier than what they have beaten already, and their skill level is probably gonna be the most accurate that you're gonna get because you're actively playing towers in that skill level. Yeah, that's gonna conclude my thoughts on how people perceive or rate towers in Obbies, in Roblox Obbies. So I hope you liked that video. Thank you. It's 2 a.m. Oh my god.